Hey everyone, and welcome back. First off, I just want to say a massive thank you for sticking with me during this little gap in uploads. I've been away on vacation, recharging, and gathering even more gripping stories for you. And to all the new subscribers who've joined us recently, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here, and I promise you're in for some truly insane stories. Today's cases dive straight into the dark world of deception, manipulation, a shocking example of how catfishing can spiral into a true crime nightmare. So buckle up, and let's get into it. A lot of people find their soulmates through social media, while others meet through mutual friends. That's how 20-year-old Renee Marsden was introduced to 23-year-old Braden Spiteri. Their connection was instant, and Renee was convinced Braden was her forever. They dreamed of a future together, a life filled with love, stability, and shared goals. But as with any love story, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Beneath the surface, this relationship was built on lies, manipulation, and a deadly secret hidden in plain sight, a secret that would lead to devastating consequences. Renee Marsden was born on October 15, 1992 in Sydney, Australia, to Teresa and Jamie. After her parents' divorce, Renee grew up with her mom and stepdad, Mark Marsden, who she adored as her own father. She had a close-knit family, with siblings Luke, Jake, and Monique. Renee was outgoing, kind-hearted, and full of life. She was especially close to her mother, Teresa, with whom she shared everything. By 2010, 18-year-old Renee was working at a salon, pursuing her dream of becoming a hairdresser. She loved her work and had big plans for the future. Around this time, she also met Angus Young, her first love. Angus described Renee as bubbly, beautiful, and full of optimism. Their relationship quickly became serious. They talked about marriage, kids, and even adopting a dog. But this fairy tale romance came to an abrupt and heartbreaking end. Renee broke off their engagement, blindsiding Angus. He couldn't understand why their once perfect relationship had fallen apart. Behind the scenes, the answer lay with Renee's so-called best friend, Camila Ziden. Camila and Renee had been inseparable since meeting in 9th grade at Mount St. Benedict's College in 2008. They bonded over shared interests and quickly became best friends. But Camila's feelings for Renee went far beyond friendship. According to court documents, it was Camila who planted the seed of doubt in Renee's mind about Angus, convincing her that he was only using her for sex. Camila's jealousy and possessiveness drove a wedge between Renee and Angus, ultimately leading Renee to call off the engagement. In hindsight, Renee's cousin Stephanie revealed that Camila's behavior was far from normal. She was controlling, manipulative, and often aggressive toward Renee, especially when she felt ignored. Camila would corner Renee in public, grab her forcefully, and even swerve the car while driving to intimidate her. Despite these red flags, Renee seemed unable to fully distance herself from Camila. Enter Braden Spiteri. After her breakup with Angus, Renee was heartbroken and vulnerable. Camila seized this opportunity to push Renee into meeting new people, insisting it was the best way to move on. She even suggested Renee talk to her ex-boyfriend, Braden Spiteri. Though initially hesitant, Renee gave in to Camila's pressure and began messaging Braden on social media. Braden seemed perfect, charming, attentive, and ambitious. He and Renee connected instantly, sharing similar likes, goals, and dreams. Their budding relationship brought Renee back to life, pulling her out of the dark emotional hole left by her breakup. But there was one glaring problem. Renee had never met Braden in person. Camila explained away Braden's reluctance to meet. According to her, Braden was incarcerated at Goulburn Jail for a driving offense that had tragically killed his best friend, Richie. Camila assured Renee that Braden was a good man who had made a terrible mistake, and Renee believed her. Braden claimed to have forfeited his visitation rights to serve a reduced sentence, making it impossible for Renee to visit him. Communication was limited to texts and occasional phone calls, which Camila said were made possible by a lawyer who smuggled a phone into the prison. Renee's relationship with Braden intensified, but so did the cracks in her friendship with Camila. Renee began to notice how deeply involved Camila was in every aspect of her life. It was suffocating. Camila seemed determined to control Renee, dictating her decisions and isolating her from others. Still, Renee trusted her best friend completely. Renee's mother, Teresa, was less trusting. She found Braden rude, jealous, and controlling. He often became upset if Renee interacted with other men, demanding her undivided attention. Teresa confronted Braden, insisting he let Renee move on and live her life until his release. Braden agreed to back off, but he and Renee continued communicating as friends. For a while, it seemed like Renee was moving on. She began dating a man named Ian, who was kind, caring, and genuinely in love with her. They got engaged in early 2013, and Teresa hoped Ian would provide the stability Renee needed, but Braden's shadow loomed large. He and Renee remained in constant contact, and by March, Ian issued an ultimatum: him or Braden. Heartbreakingly, Renee chose Braden. She called off her engagement to Ian, a man who truly loved her, and returned to the man she believed was her soulmate. This decision would seal her fate. By mid-2013, Renee's co-workers noticed a change in her. She seemed distracted, anxious, and increasingly dependent on her relationship with Braden. In July, Braden suddenly went silent, leaving Renee devastated. She sent him countless messages, begging for a response. Finally, on August 5th, she received a text. Braden wanted to break up. He told her they needed a break and some space. The message shattered Renee. That afternoon, she made a brief call to Goulburn Jail, desperate to understand why Braden was ending things. She didn't get an answer. Distraught, she went home, assuring her mother she was fine. But Teresa's relief was short-lived. That evening, she received a chilling text from Braden. "Sort your daughter out. She's threatening to end her life." Teresa rushed to Renee's side, only to find her calmly getting ready for a night out with friends. Renee left home at 5:22 p.m., dressed in black. Hours later, her car was found parked near the Gap, a notorious cliffside in Sydney known for suicides. CCTV footage confirmed the worst. Renee had jumped. In the wake of Renee's death, Teresa contacted Braden, demanding answers. But when police investigated, they discovered the shocking truth. Braden Spiteri didn't exist. He was a fabrication, created by none other than Camila Zaiden. For 18 months, Camila had posed as Braden, using 2 phones to maintain the illusion. She exploited Renee's vulnerabilities, manipulating her emotions and controlling her life under the guise of love. The Braden photos were of an innocent man, Cameron Lang, whose image Camila had stolen after meeting him at a nightclub. Confronted with the evidence, Camila confessed. She claimed she and Renee had been in a secret romantic relationship, using Braden as a cover to hide their connection from Renee's family. Renee's loved ones rejected this explanation. They believed Camila acted out of obsession and jealousy, using the Braden persona to isolate and dominate Renee. Camila faced no legal consequences. At the time, Australia had no laws against catfishing or emotional manipulation. Camila walked free, leaving Renee's family to grapple with their unimaginable loss. Adding insult to injury, Camila went on to marry a man and start a family, living her life as if nothing had happened. To make matters worse, Renee's parents and siblings occasionally see Camila around town, sometimes bumping into her at the local supermarket. It's a cruel twist of fate that the person who tormented their daughter and led her to such despair still lives nearby, carrying on with her life as if nothing ever happened. Camila didn't even have the decency to move away, leaving the Marsden family to endure the painful reminders of her presence in their community. Every encounter is a fresh wound, a stark reminder of the life Renee should still be living, a life stolen by the betrayal of someone she trusted most. Teresa and her family continue their fight for justice, not just for Renee, but for others who might fall victim to such calculated manipulation. They advocate tirelessly for the introduction of Renee's Law, which aims to criminalize catfishing and emotional abuse. Though progress is slow, they remain determined, fueled by the hope that no other family will have to endure the pain they've suffered. Renee's story is a heartbreaking example of how unchecked emotional abuse and manipulation can have devastating consequences. It's a call to action, a plea for greater awareness, and a reminder of the importance of compassion, vigilance, and standing up for those who may not have the strength to stand up for themselves. Rest in peace, Renee Marsden, a bright light extinguished far too soon. Hey, just a quick interruption. If you like this content, it would mean the world to me if you could hit that like button. It helps me out a lot. And if you haven't subscribed yet, why not? It's free. Leave a comment if you would like me to cover any true crime stories. Okay, let's get back to it. This next story has to be one of the most insane stories of revenge plots a woman has ever taken on a cheating partner. It's evil. It's bizarre and sad. I first heard this story in November 2024, and I just knew I was going to share it. So buckle up, because this is just so insane, it sounds like a made-up Hollywood movie. Emerlinda Palomo's reaction to her partner Nathaniel Huai Jr.'s infidelity was nothing short of unhinged. Most people, when faced with a cheating partner, either confront the issue head-on or decide to walk away. Not Palomo. Instead, her response was to orchestrate one of the most elaborate and horrifying revenge plots imaginable, a scheme that would take 2 years of meticulous planning, involve countless layers of deception, and culminate in the massacre of an innocent family. Emerlinda Palomo and Nathaniel Huai Jr. had been together for 8 years. On the surface, they appeared to be a stable couple, their lives intertwined by years of shared experiences. But beneath the facade of domestic harmony, cracks were forming in their relationship. Palomo was deeply invested in Huai, so much so that she seemed unable to see the red flags of his behavior. Huai, a former security guard, worked alongside Zoraida Bartolome, a charismatic and hard-working woman with a family of her own. Over time, their professional relationship became personal. While Huai and Zoraida maintained the appearance of friendly co-workers, their connection had evolved into a full-blown affair, complete with secret meetings and stolen moments. Palomo, ever watchful, began to suspect something was wrong. It wasn't long before she uncovered the truth. Text messages, late nights, and whispered phone calls painted a picture she couldn't ignore. Huai was having an affair with his co-worker. Zoraida, a married mother of 2, had become the object of Huai's affection, and Palomo was being left in the shadows. For most, discovering a betrayal like this would lead to heartbreak and confrontation. But Palomo wasn't like most people. Instead of addressing the issue with Huai or walking away, she chose a far darker path. Palomo kept her discovery to herself, quietly seething as she began to plot her revenge. Palomo's jealousy festered, transforming into something far more sinister. She didn't just want to end Hui's affair, she wanted total control, and she was willing to go to unimaginable lengths to achieve it. While outwardly maintaining the appearance of a loyal and supportive partner, Palomo began to construct an elaborate plan. She decided that if she couldn't stop the affair by conventional means, she would create an entirely new reality, one where Huai would be so consumed by fear and paranoia that he wouldn't dare stray again. Her plan began with deception. Using burner phones, fake accounts, and online messaging apps, Palomo fabricated an intricate web of lies. She invented a dangerous Mexican cartel, complete with enforcers, hackers, and high-ranking members, all of whom seemed to have one goal: to control Huai's every move. Through her fabricated cartel, Palomo began to manipulate Huai in ways that were as clever as they were disturbing. She sent threatening messages, staged warnings, and even crafted fake news articles to make the cartel seem real. But she didn't stop there. Palomo extended her lies to Zoraida, sending her chilling messages that warned her to end the affair, or else. Palomo's actions were born out of desperation and a need for control. But as her plan grew more elaborate, so did her obsession. She didn't just want Huai to end the affair, she wanted to eliminate the perceived threat entirely. For 2 years, Palomo maintained her charade, creating an alternate reality where Huai was constantly watched, monitored, and manipulated. She convinced him that the cartel was everywhere, that his life and the lives of those around him depended on his obedience. Huai, unaware of the deception, fell deeper into Palomo's trap. The affair with Zoraida continued, but so did his growing paranoia. He became convinced that he was being watched, that every decision he made was being scrutinized. Palomo, meanwhile, reveled in her ability to control him. She didn't care about the emotional toll it was taking on Huey, or the innocent people who would be caught in the crossfire. Her obsession had reached its peak, and she was ready to take the final, horrifying step in her plan. For 2 years, Palomo's delusions had grown, her fabricated cartel becoming more intricate and terrifying with every lie. Huey, completely ensnared in her web of manipulation, was no longer questioning the bizarre and dangerous orders he believed were coming from powerful cartel bosses. He was living in a state of constant fear, convinced his life and hers depended on his compliance. Palomo fed this paranoia relentlessly, sending messages to both Huey and Zoraida that made it clear the cartel was watching. Every text, every fabricated warning served to deepen the control she had over Huey. But for Palomo, manipulation and control weren't enough. She wanted revenge. By the summer of 2023, Palomo had set her sights on Zoraida and her family. In her mind, they were the obstacle standing between her and Huey's loyalty. The solution was simple. They needed to be eliminated. September 16, 2023, was a quiet evening in Romeoville, Illinois. Families were winding down for the night, and the neighborhood where Zoraida Bartolome lived with her husband Alberto Rolon and their 2 sons was peaceful as always. But behind the doors of one home, a nightmare was about to unfold. Huey, armed and believing he was following cartel orders, broke into the Rolon Bartolome residence. He didn't hesitate. According to the evidence, his actions were calculated and methodical, like a soldier carrying out a mission. First, he executed Alberto. Then he found Zoraida, ending her life as well. Their 2 young sons, huddled together in another room, were the next victims of this senseless rampage. Even the family's 3 dogs weren't spared. When the carnage was over, Huey trashed the house, spray painting walls and overturning furniture in an attempt to make the scene look like a burglary gone wrong. The family's home, once a place of love and warmth, was now a crime scene filled with horror and heartbreak. The discovery of the crime shocked the quiet community of Romeoville to its core. The police were called to the home on September 17th for a welfare check after Alberto failed to show up for work, a highly unusual occurrence for the dependable father. What officers found inside the house was beyond comprehension. The entire Rolon Bartolome family, along with their pets, had been executed in cold blood. The brutality of the scene left even veteran officers shaken. Adding to the mystery, neighbors reported hearing nothing unusual that night. No gunshots, no screams. The silence only deepened the fear and confusion spreading through the community. Who could have committed such an unspeakable crime, and why? As investigators worked tirelessly to piece together what had happened, their breakthrough came from technology. Cell phone records, security camera footage, and license plate readers painted a disturbing picture. The evidence led them to Nathaniel Huey Jr. and his fiancée, Emerlinda Palomo. At first, authorities believed Palomo might have been a victim, coerced into compliance by Huey, but as they dug deeper, the truth came to light. Palomo wasn't a victim. She was the mastermind. The sheer scope of her deception left investigators stunned. Through her fake cartel identities, she had manipulated Huey into believing he was under constant surveillance. She had fabricated threats against both of them, creating a false reality so convincing that Huey never questioned it. Palomo's manipulation wasn't just psychological, it was technological. She had used voice-altering software to leave threatening voicemails, created fake news articles and websites to make the cartel seem real, and even staged her own kidnapping to further manipulate Huey. When investigators uncovered Palomo's digital trail, they realized how far she had gone to maintain control. This wasn't just jealousy or revenge, it was obsession taken to a terrifying extreme. After the murders, both Huey and Palomo knew it was only a matter of time before the police closed in. On September 20th, just days after the crime, the couple fled Illinois, heading west in a desperate bid to evade capture. Their attempt to escape ended in a high-speed chase in Catoosa, Oklahoma. Police body cam footage captured the dramatic pursuit, which came to a fiery end when Huey lost control of their vehicle, crashing into a barrier. In the chaos that followed, Huey made one final devastating decision. Turning his gun on Palomo, he shot her before taking his own life. The woman who had orchestrated the entire tragedy became its final victim. As the dust settled, the full extent of Palomo's manipulation became clear. Her jealousy, obsession, and need for control had driven her to destroy not just the lives of Zoraida Bartolome and her family, but her own life and Huey's as well. What's even more chilling is that Palomo didn't participate in the killings directly. Instead, she sat outside in a car, waiting for Huey to complete his deadly mission. She didn't lift a finger to stop him, nor did she show any remorse for the innocent lives lost. To her, this was simply the culmination of a long-planned scheme, a way to eliminate her rival and solidify her control over Huey. While Palomo's manipulation was central to this tragedy, Huey's willingness to carry out such a horrific act cannot be ignored. Manipulated or not, it takes a deeply disturbed individual to execute an entire family, including young children and pets. The fact that Hai followed through with Palomo's plan, believing he was under cartel orders, speaks to his own psychological fragility and capacity for violence. The Romeoville massacre stands as a chilling reminder of how far unchecked jealousy and obsession can go. Palomo's decision to target not just Zoraida but her entire family shows a level of cruelty and insanity that is almost impossible to fathom. Rather than confront her problems or seek help, Palomo chose to craft an elaborate fantasy world where she could pull the strings, and in doing so, she destroyed countless lives, including her own. This case is a haunting example of the dangers of manipulation and the devastating consequences of unresolved rage and jealousy. It's a story that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature and the dark extremes some are willing to go to in the name of control. Cynthia Hoffman was a kind, loving young woman who wanted nothing more than friendship and acceptance. Her tragic death serves as a heartbreaking reminder of the dangers of online manipulation and blind trust. Though her life was cut short by the selfishness and cruelty of others, Cynthia's memory lives on in the hearts of those who loved her. This story is a call to remain vigilant, protect the vulnerable, and seek justice for those who can no longer speak for themselves. Denali Bramer's life was marked by instability and trauma. One of 5 daughters, Denali's early years were filled with neglect and abuse. The tragic turning point came when her mother's boyfriend killed Denali's 2-month-old sister, Gabrielle. After this horrifying event, Denali and her siblings were removed from their mother's care and placed in foster homes. Despite opportunities provided by her adoptive family to break the cycle of dysfunction, Denali veered toward a self-destructive path. As a teenager, Denali rebelled and sought validation from anyone willing to offer it. She spent significant time online, where she connected with strangers who often did not have her best interests at heart. In late 2018, Denali encountered one such individual, a man who called himself Tyler, but whose real name was Darren Schillmiller. Denali Bramer's life was marked by instability and trauma. One of 5 daughters, Denali's early years were filled with neglect and abuse. The tragic turning point came when her mother's boyfriend killed Denali's 2-month-old sister, Gabrielle. After this horrifying event, Denali and her siblings were removed from their mother's care and placed in foster homes. Despite opportunities provided by her adoptive family to break the cycle of dysfunction, Denali veered toward a self-destructive path. As a teenager, Denali rebelled and sought validation from anyone willing to offer it. She spent significant time online, where she connected with strangers who often did not have her best interests at heart. In late 2018, Denali encountered one such individual, a man who called himself Tyler, but whose real name was Darren Schillmiller. Darren Schillmiller was a 21-year-old man living in Indiana. Posing as a wealthy, attractive millionaire named Tyler, he catfished Denali on social media. Darren's real life was far from the glamorous image he portrayed online. He lived in his grandmother's basement in the small town of Salisbury, Indiana. Former classmates described him as shy, awkward, and often bullied. As he grew older, Darren's behavior took a darker turn. He began creating fake profiles to manipulate and exploit others, asking women for explicit photos and engaging in increasingly disturbing behavior. When Darren and Denali began their online relationship, he quickly gained control over her. He used his fabricated identity to build trust and eventually escalated his demands. By April 2019, Darren proposed a horrifying plan. If Denali sexually assaulted and murdered someone on video, he would pay her $9 million. Rather than recognizing the absurdity of this demand, Denali agreed. Denali's mind was consumed by Darren's promises. Over the next several weeks, she recruited 4 friends to help carry out the crime. Tragically, Denali chose her best friend, Cynthia Hoffman, as the victim. Cynthia's trusting nature and close friendship with Denali made her an easy target. On June 2, 2019, Denali invited Cynthia to go hiking at Thunderbird Falls, a picturesque trail about 30 minutes from Anchorage. Cynthia, excited to spend time with her friend, gladly accepted. That afternoon, Denali picked up Cynthia and another accomplice, Caden McIntosh. Together, the 3 drove to the trailhead. They wandered off the main path and ventured deep into the woods along the Eklutna River, far from prying eyes. What Cynthia didn't know was that she had been lured into a trap. As they walked, Denali and Caden ambushed her, binding her hands and feet with duct tape. They gagged her and forced her to kneel by the riverbank. Following Darren's orders, Caden shot Cynthia in the back of the head. Her lifeless body was pushed into the river in a crude attempt to hide the evidence. To cover their tracks, Denali used Cynthia's phone to send a text message to Cynthia's parents, claiming she was meeting friends at a park on the other side of town. Denali then burned Cynthia's belongings at another location before returning home as if nothing had happened. Cynthia's father, Timothy Hoffman, grew worried when his daughter failed to respond to calls and messages. That night, he began searching for her himself. By the following morning, Timothy reported Cynthia missing to the Anchorage Police Department. However, the family was told they needed to wait 24 hours before filing an official missing person report, a delay that haunts many families in similar situations. While Timothy searched desperately for his daughter, Denali made a critical mistake. She confessed to the murder on Snapchat, posting a message that read, "I just want to thank everyone that's been there for me my whole life and these past few years, and everything. I fucked up. I know I did. If I could take back what I've done, I can't. I am sorry, everybody. My family, my friends. I guess you will hear from me when you hear from me, but I won't be back for a long time. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it." The disturbing post quickly reached law enforcement, who brought Denali and Caden in for questioning. Initially, Denali claimed Cynthia's death was accidental, but her story unraveled under pressure. Soon, both she and Caden confessed to their roles in the murder. Investigators located Cynthia's body along the riverbank near Thunderbird Falls. The discovery confirmed the worst fears of her family. During their investigation, police uncovered the messages between Denali and Tyler. Digital forensics traced the phone number to Darren Schillmiller in Indiana. When confronted, Darren admitted to orchestrating the murder. He revealed he had manipulated Denali into carrying out his twisted fantasies, promising money he never had. Darren's crimes extended beyond Cynthia's murder. Investigators found evidence of child exploitation and sexual abuse, leading to additional charges. In his interrogation, Darren showed no remorse, describing the crime with chilling detachment. Cynthia Hoffman's death sent shockwaves through Anchorage and beyond. Hundreds attended her funeral on June 13, 2019, at the Faith Christian Community Church. Dozens of motorcyclists escorted her hearse, a tribute organized by her father Timothy. During the service, Timothy urged attendees to celebrate Cynthia's life rather than dwell on the tragedy. In his emotional remarks, he said, "I don't want this reunion to be a sadness. I want it to be a new birth of my daughter." Darren Schillmiller was sentenced to 99 years in prison without the possibility of parole for 45 years. Denali Bramer also received a 99-year sentence for her role in Cynthia's murder. Caden McIntosh awaits trial, facing charges of first-degree murder and evidence tampering. 2 additional juveniles involved in the crime have been charged but remain unnamed due to their ages. The FBI's Anchorage Special Agent Jeffrey Peterson issued a stern warning. If you're sitting in your mom's basement and you're planning to commit a crime in Alaska, thinking you're safe because you're far away, you're not. We will track you down and we will bring you back to face justice. Cynthia Hoffman was a kind, loving young woman who wanted nothing more than friendship and acceptance. Her tragic death serves as a heartbreaking reminder of the dangers of online manipulation and blind trust. Though her life was cut short by the selfishness and cruelty of others, Cynthia's memory lives on in the hearts of those who loved her. This story is a call to remain vigilant, protect the vulnerable, and seek justice for those who can no longer speak for themselves. Friday, November 25th, 2022, was meant to be a quiet Thanksgiving weekend in Riverside, California. Families in the neighborhood of Price Court were still enjoying the holiday, relaxing, sharing meals, and creating memories. But that Friday morning, an act of unfathomable cruelty shattered the peace of the small cul-de-sac, leaving behind a trail of devastation that no one could have anticipated. By the end of the day, 3 beloved family members, Mark Winnick, 69, Sherry Winnick, 65, and their daughter Brooke Winnick, 38, were dead, along with their 3 cherished dogs. The family home was set ablaze in an attempt to erase the horrific crime. The only survivor, Brooke's 15-year-old daughter, was kidnapped by the perpetrator and would later be rescued. This is the tragic and shocking story of the Winnick family, a story of manipulation, betrayal, and senseless violence that shook a community to its core. Mark and Sherry Winnick were the heart and soul of their family. Mark was a retired teacher and a volunteer softball and baseball coach at Arlington High School. Known for his infectious energy and dedication, Mark was beloved by his players and students alike. He wasn't just a coach, he was a mentor, always checking in with his students to ensure they were thriving, even after they graduated. Sherry Winnick was the epitome of warmth and care. She adored family gatherings and took great joy in baking cookies and cakes for her children and grandchildren during the holidays. Thanksgiving and Christmas were her favorite times of the year, when everyone could come together and simply be a family. Their daughter, Brooke Winnick, was a single mother raising 2 daughters. Despite the challenges she faced, Brooke's life revolved around her children. Her biggest joys were watching her girls grow and supporting their achievements. She was proud beyond words when her older daughter joined her school's color guard, sharing the news with anyone who would listen. Brooke's love for her daughters was evident in everything she did. For Brooke's teenage daughters, life with their mother and grandparents was filled with love and stability. The family was tightly knit, making the tragedy that struck them all the more heartbreaking. At 6:58 a.m. on November 25th, a red Kia Soul pulled into the quiet neighborhood of Price Court. A man wearing a tan trench coat, a black fedora, and a face mask stepped out of the car carrying a black duffel bag. He walked around the neighborhood, pausing outside the Winnick home before driving off. Twice more he returned to repeat the same strange behavior. His actions were unsettling enough for a neighbor to call the Riverside Police Department's non-emergency line to report the license plate. But the man hadn't done anything overtly illegal yet, so the report was simply logged. At 9 a.m., Brooke Winnick and her 15-year-old daughter left the house briefly, leaving Sherry and Mark alone. What unfolded in the hours that followed was a nightmare. Around 11:08 a.m., 911 dispatchers received a call from concerned neighbors. A man had been seen leaving the Winnick home with a distressed teenage girl who was barefoot and appeared to be mouthing the words, "Help me." The man placed her in the back of the red Kia Soul before driving off. Shortly after, neighbors noticed smoke and flames erupting from the Winnick residence and called emergency services. When firefighters arrived, the home was fully engulfed. Inside, they made a grisly discovery. The bodies of Mark, Sherry, and Brooke were found near the front door, bound, gagged, and suffocated with plastic bags over their heads. Brooke's throat had also been slashed. The family's 3 dogs and their pet bird perished in the fire. The only survivor was the 4th dog, who had been in the backyard. The 15-year-old daughter of Brooke Winnick, who had been taken by the assailant, was found alive later that day. Her survival was due in large part to a vigilant neighbor who reported the red Kia Soul's license plate earlier in the morning. Law enforcement tracked the car to Kelso, an unincorporated area in San Bernardino County, where a high-speed chase ensued. The driver, 28-year-old Austin Lee Edwards, eventually stopped on a rural road. A standoff followed, ending with Edwards' death. Either by police gunfire or self-inflicted wounds, reports remain conflicting. The teen, whose name has been withheld to protect her privacy, was taken into protective custody. She later told police that she had met Edwards online and initially believed he was a 17-year-old boy. Over time, their conversations became manipulative, and Edwards demanded inappropriate photos. When she cut off contact, his obsession turned deadly. Detectives theorized that his actions were either an act of retaliation or an attempt to silence her and cover his tracks. A GoFundMe campaign was launched to support the 2 sisters who had lost their mother and grandparents. The campaign raised over $100,000, which will help provide for the girls as they navigate their new lives. The funds also contributed to their ongoing trauma counseling. Austin Lee Edwards, the man responsible for this horrific crime, was a 28-year-old Virginia State Deputy Sheriff. Before driving across the country to California, Edwards had posed as a teenager online, using social media and chat platforms to groom his victim. But Edwards' dark history revealed even more disturbing patterns. After the Winnick case made national headlines, another woman came forward with her story. Now 21 years old, she had been just 13 when she met Edwards on the same chat platform. Edwards, then 20, groomed and harassed her for years, even after she tried to cut ties. Thousands of messages documented his manipulation, threats, and obsession. In one chilling message, he told her, "There's no obstacle that's going to stop us from being together." The harassment only stopped when she turned 18. In 2016, Edwards was detained for psychiatric evaluation after threatening to harm himself and his father. Despite this alarming incident, he later managed to join law enforcement. Virginia State Police later admitted that a human error allowed Edwards to pass his background check, despite his history of mental health issues and a court order stripping him of his gun rights. The tragedy shook the Riverside community to its core. Mark Winnick's former students and players came together to honor the man who had left such a positive impact on their lives. A candlelight vigil was held outside the Winnick home, now a somber memorial filled with flowers, photos, and messages of love. Mark's nephew and godson, Eric, described the family as selfless and full of love. Price Court was ceremoniously renamed Wink Court in honor of the family. Mark and Sherry's pride and joy were their kids and grandkids, Eric said. You never saw them beam so brightly as when they were around their family. Michelle Blandon, Brooke's sister, has become an advocate for online safety. In a public statement, she urged parents to monitor their children's online activity and talk openly about the dangers of interacting with strangers. Anybody can say they're someone else, Michelle said. This horrific event started with an inappropriate online romance between a predator and a child. Despite the heartbreak, Michelle expressed gratitude for the community's support. We hope this tragedy can serve as a warning and a wake-up call, she said. Please tell our story, not to scare, but to educate. Mark, Sherry, and Brooke Winnick lived lives full of love and kindness, touching everyone they met. Their loss is a painful reminder of how dangerous online predators can be and how important it is to remain vigilant. As law enforcement continues to investigate Edwards' past, Michelle and her family are fighting for answers and accountability, determined to ensure that no other family suffers the same fate. The Winnick family will never be forgotten, and their story serves as a powerful call to action for greater awareness, vigilance, and justice. Thank you so much for listening to today's video. Cases like these are a chilling reminder of how dangerous the internet can be when it falls into the wrong hands. Catfishing isn't just an innocent prank. It can have devastating, life-altering consequences. Please, take a moment to check in on your loved ones, especially your children. Know who they're talking to online and what kind of interactions they're having. A simple conversation could make all the difference. If you have any true crimes you want me to cover, please comment below and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you all for listening. Until next time, Midnight Murder and Mystery out.